So what have I been reading this week, and has it been any good? Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Adrian and we are doing a My Week in Books today, letting you know what I've been reading and how I have been enjoying it. So let's jump straight in with some of the things I was continuing with from last week. First up is The Echo of Things to Come by James Islington, book 2 of the Lycaeus trilogy. This I am currently about 2/3 of the way through. It's been a bit of a slower read for me, mainly because I've just been getting distracted by some other things that have been taking my fancy. It is still enjoyable, it is still a good read, and I'm definitely going to keep going with it. Just been put on the back burner a little bit this week. The thing I was continuing over from last week was Furies of Calderon by Jim Butcher. This is book 1 in the Codex Alera series. This I have now finished and I absolutely loved it. So I've said to you guys before that I have started Furies of the Calderon in the past and never quite got on with it. I didn't get very far into it before other things sort of distracted me and took my fancy. Here I committed to reading it all the way through and I absolutely loved it. I think it is a very, very interesting concept and execution from Jim Butcher. For those of you who don't know, this series was sort of written as a bet from Jim Butcher. He bet someone that he could take two of their most disparate ideas and mash them up into a good fantasy novel. And he actually did this to prove the point that good writing is far more important to how well a book does than a very good concept. So he thought he could take the strangest, most mismatched concept, throw it together, and if the writing was of good quality, it would still make a good series. And that is inevitably true in this book. It is written really rather well. I really enjoy the 4 main point of views we get. There's a good diversity of who these characters are and their place in society, their age, all these kind of things. And I really, really enjoy that. I think there are some interesting little tidbits and reveals as we get later on into the book as well, but generally just very, very well written. I enjoyed the exploration of culture and the different cultures that we had in Alera, the sort of Roman-esque culture and then the more like savage barbarian culture, but which we do get a little bit of insight into, and it is very interesting. I like the characters we meet from that culture, from the Márchè. I think it's very interesting. They're done very well. And generally just a really, really well executed, well written, well plotted novel that I gave a solid 5 stars. Really enjoyed this. After not many 5-star reads last month, I'm jumping straight in, my first finished book this month, and it is a 5-star read for me. I just absolutely loved it. It was brilliant. I particularly thought that Butcher did a great job writing large-scale conflict as well. Obviously, I know that he can do small scale conflict. I know that he manages to do sort of one-on-one fights and that kind of intrigue and battle in the Dresden Files very well. I know we've seen some slightly larger stuff there in the later books, but this was a very good example of how to write a siege and how to write a bigger armed conflict, and I think Jim Butcher did a very good job with it. So guys, before I talk about a self-published book that I read this week, if you enjoy discovering new books, if you enjoy discovering self-published books, click the like button so people can find this video and they can discover this book, because it is an absolute pearl of a book, I promise you. Now, the other book that I finished this week, I also started this week, and I read it in 2 days basically. Now, this is a book that I've only ever heard one person talk about, and that was Steve Talks Books and Stuff. So go check out his channel, he'll be linked down below. Thank you to him for bringing up this book, because it has been an absolute joy to read. This is Seasons of Albadone, and this is by Christopher Warman and Elan Márchè, I believe is how you pronounce it. So this book is a short novel. It's just about 200 pages bang on, and it follows 4 different characters, but it doesn't do it in the usual way of interlinking their narratives. It does it as essentially 4 short stories. So we are in Albadone. This is a forest setting, very much so a thick forest where the people are very much in touch with nature and with the seasons. We get like a 2-page prologue which gives us sort of the big overarching backstory for the world, almost creation myth of the world, and then from there we jump straight in with our first character. So the 4 characters we follow, the first is an apprentice to the enchantress who lives in this forest. She has the ability to do spells and create runes that do different magical effects. So it seems a relatively natural part of life to this society, and we follow the apprentice to this enchantress as she is trying to continue to learn and do the right things for the people of this forest, and that is set in autumn. We then move on to winter, where we follow an alcoholic father as he struggles with his drinking problem, and he also struggles with how to support his family as best he can. This I found a very touching story. It brought emotions out in me that I wasn't expecting. So this short story in particular really resonated with me. I very much felt for our characters, and it had a very strong emotional impact on me as a story that I just absolutely adored and found a very interesting character conflict at the centre of it. We're then following a foreman who is heading up a project in the woods. He's trying to bring a bit more technology and innovation to this more rural setting of Albadone. And we then see how this technology impacts on the more natural surroundings of this rural setting. And finally, we follow a mother who has quite literally lost her voice and is fighting to save her daughter, her young baby daughter. This book looks like a YA book if you look at the cover. It is very much not. It is hard-hitting, it is emotional. It has got the biggest emotional reaction out of me of a book I've read in the last couple of months. There's nothing I've read in the last few months that I have felt quite so connected to the characters in, or I've felt the emotional punch of the story beats as hard as I have in here. And this is a self-published book, and it has less than 50 ratings on Goodreads. Less than 50 ratings on Goodreads. That's absolutely criminal. This book is brilliant. It is absolutely astounding, and it is literally 200 pages bang on. If you need a short fantasy to get you back out of a reading slump that you are going to emotionally connect with, and it's even shorter than those 200 pages because it's literally 4 50-page stories. It was just a wonderful, wonderful read. It is one of the most interesting reading experiences I've had this year, and I cannot recommend it to you guys enough. Seriously, guys, go and read this book, please. Please, 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 please. It is so good. And then finally, the last book I've got to this week, I've only just started in the last couple of days. I'm about 15% of the way in, and this is The Voyage of the Basilisk. This is book 3 of the Memoirs of Lady Trent by Marie Brennan. I've obviously got back to this much quicker than I did for book 2 because I enjoyed book 2 so much. When I did pick Tropic of Serpents up, I loved it so much. It was a 4.5-star read for me, very enjoyable, and I felt I needed to get back to this series soon, and that's exactly what I've done. Jump back into it, and hopefully I will continue to enjoy this book as much as I did book 2. So far, it's looking very positive, but I'm not very far into it, so your mileage may vary. So there you go, that's what I've been reading this week. I'll see you guys soon.